my small breast and my little frame and my sweet little girl voice. It exudes something in people that is extremely passionate and tantalizing.
Do you think girls should shave down there? Like, does it matter to you?
Yeah. Get down, her pussy gonna stay.
In my arms, she was always Lolita.
Is it for like health? Is it for like appearance? I don't know. Maybe it's like an ingrained thing in my brain from society. Who knows?
I swear to God, all your men fantasize about me and probably wonder what it's like to be with someone who is as small as I am.
So I got a Brazilian wax recently. Oh, I'm sorry, how rude. Hey, how are you? My name is Shakespeare. You look lovely in that shade of color. Anyways, I got a Brazilian wax. I voluntarily drove to the nearest wax center in my area, climbed up onto that table covered in that medical baking sheet paper, and I let a stranger dive headfirst into my love portal and backdoor landing strip to remove every inch of hair for $120, no less. I think they have some sort of brainwashing thing going on because during the entirety of my wax, my specialist kept talking about the cool, innovative, exclusive products that they sell to maintain wax skin. And when I go out to the checkout area, I can just look for myself and choose whatever I want. To which I, of course, decline in my head because I'm not falling for it. I got bills, baby. Except the wax center is tiny and all the products are on this one wall right next to the cashier, and there's other people standing around you while there is a worldwide panty happening outside. So you subconsciously try to scooch over into a more private bubble, which just so happens to be against the products. And I am telling you that your nose is practically pushed up against it through your mask, of course, and they all look so shiny and pretty and new, and like a human crow, you just have got to get one. Except I got a bag full, and I am every targeted ad creator's wet dream. The point is, I decided to never get waxed again in my life. I personally felt exposed, unlike myself, and just totally wrong.
So naturally,
I went ahead and booked another appointment. This whole ordeal really made me think,
what is wrong with me?
why do I put myself through shaving nicks and excruciating wax appointments when I know I hate the aftermath of it once the second or third week comes back around? Why do I feel like I need to be completely hairless in order to be desirable, not only in person, but even in the minds of others? And what is with this insistent nagging that this, like everything else, has something to do with society's growingly unattainable expectations for women? You know where this is going. About 3 weeks ago, I asked on my community tab for video topic suggestions relating to tropes and societal expectations. Esther wrote to me, "This one may be a little dark, but what I've noticed is that a lot of people's perceptions of femininity are tied to very predatory ideas and Wikipedia files. I don't know. Is it just me?" Well, Esther, I've got 8 pages of source notes here that confirm that no, it's not just you. Childlike innocence, virginity, and a weird connection to sensuality walk into a bar. Lana Del Rey walks in right after. Sorry. If you watched my 12 going on 21 video, you know there is a long history of mainstream media pushing the image of the sexy young girl, which is quite frankly the worst 3 words that I've ever put in succession, between teen and barely legal categories on porn sites, and an emphasis on sexualizing teen characters on terribly written shows. A mark has definitely been left on our collective perception of young girls. But none are so infamous and as long-lasting as the 1955 novel Lolita. Written by Vladimir Nabokov and narrated by the terrible Humbert, the plot follows the relationship between a middle-aged man, that being Humbert, and his 12-year-old stepdaughter, Dolores, or in his eyes, Lolita. Lolita is what Humbert, a Wikipedia file, calls a nymphette, a sexually especially attractive girl or young woman. I say no other phenomenon has had as intense of an effect on pop culture as Lolita because it quite literally shaped many themes within pop culture itself. According to Ira Wells, Nabokov's novel spawned 2 films, musical adaptations, ballets, stage adaptations, a Russian language opera, spin-off novels, bizarre fashion subcultures, and memorabilia that runs the gamut from kitschy to creepy, from heart-shaped glasses to anatomically precise blow-up dolls. With the possible exception of Gatsby, no 20th century American literary character penetrated the public consciousness quite like Lolita. In the 60 years since she first appeared, Lolita transcended her original textual instance. She became an archetype, an icon of youthful desirability. Lolita became America's sweetheart. You can find references of Lolita across Lana Del Rey's discography and allusions to her in film classics like 1999's American Beauty. Somewhere between the late 50s and now, Lolita was refashioned from a victim of terrible circumstances to a sex icon. Even in Stanley Kubrick's adaptation of Nabokov's novel, Lolita is over-sexualized compared to how she actually was portrayed in the novel. Quote, Nabokov repeatedly emphasizes that there is nothing conventionally beautiful about the nymphette. The novel's Lolita is a tomboyish, malodorous little urchin. Humbert comments on her monkeyish nimbleness. He duly notes every time she picks her nose or adjusts a wedgie. Kubrick, on the other hand, airbrushes this character into a 1950s pinup model. In her introductory shot, Lolita is undressed in a bikini. Propped up on one arm, the posture and lighting carefully coordinated to insinuate the womanly swell of her hips, the smooth perfection of her long legs, her sultry expression as she looks up to meet our gaze. Awkwardly reminiscent of Riverdale, she's 12, but you know, in a she's actually 24 years old with a mortgage kind of way.
Hi, I'm editing. My headscarf is tied funny. I'm cold and this video comes out tomorrow, even though I filmed it today. And I just want to say, it turns out Sue Ellen Lyon, the girl who portrayed Lolita in Stanley Kubrick's Lolita, was actually 14 at the time of filming, not an adult like I originally thought. So there is no such thing as a womanly swell of her hips, as Ira Wells puts it in that quote from earlier. I think that the idea that the 1962 adaptation was sexualized is true, and the same goes for the 1997 version with yet another teen actress playing Lolita, but we'll get to that in a second. I don't feel comfortable describing children with womanly adjectives because they're not women, they're children. And just to make things worse for everyone, Nabokov called Sue Ellen, a minor at the time, the perfect nymphette, which...
With that being said, I understand how framing works and how the unreliable narration provided by Humbert plays a role in how Lolita is portrayed in movie adaptations and the novel itself as a seductive sex icon, because he's a Wikipedia file. He's not going to portray Lolita as a victim because he doesn't view her that way. If he had morals, this wouldn't even be a discussion to begin with. But I do think it's worth noting that even when Nabokov made clear that Lolita was not meant to be a romantic or hot novel, people still ran with that theme anyways, and fashioned an entire movement after it. That, besties, is the point of contention, not really the original novel or Nabokov himself. The blurring of childhood and promiscuous adulthood portrayed within the Lolita archetype is heavily related to the media's portrayal of young women in general, and celebrity young women especially. Britney Spears was 17 years old when she graced the cover of Rolling Stone, holding a Teletubby teddy bear and pink cord telephone. These childlike, or perhaps more tween-like, accessories were strangely paired with Britney's shirt wide open and black bra showing. The writer of her article, Stephen Daly, begins with this drabble. Britney Spears extends a honeyed thigh across the length of the sofa, keeping one foot on the floor as she does so. Her blonde, streaked hair is piled high, exposing 2 little diamond earrings on each earlobe. Her face is fully made up, down to carefully applied lip liner. The baby fat logo of Spears' pink t-shirt is distended by her ample chest, and her silky white shorts with dark blue piping cling snugly to her hips. She cocks her head and smiles receptively. But hold on, it's not like that. Alicia Silverstone was 19 when her Rolling Stone profile came out, and that too featured a lot of childlike wonder and a weird edge of promiscuity. Rich Cohen opens the article by stating, Alicia Silverstone is a kittenish 18-year-old movie star whom lots of men want to sleep with. Off to the roughest start imaginable. When Alicia shows the writer a picture of her 6-year-old self in a bikini, Cohen states that it, quote, brings to mind underground rings and police sting operations. The pictures Rolling Stone uses for her profile are more of the same as Britney's. A strange dependence on stereotypical childish things like stuffed plushies and images of her hair pulled back into ribbons as she blows a giant bubblegum bubble, or her in lace bloomers, legs splayed open while she holds a teddy bear. As Tavisha Sood puts it, the portrayal of women in mainstream media has also exacerbated and contributed to this infantilization of women. Since the 1970s, there has been a steady increase in women and femininity being tied inextricably to fragility and infantility. In magazines, women are often depicted in poses and or clothing that reaffirm the stereotypic beliefs of women being vulnerable, weak, and childlike, end quote. But there are many ways in which infantilization is manifested, even amongst commoners like you and I. The infantilization shown in these pictures and profiles of Hollywood's young stars can also be weaponized against older everyday women outside of celebrityship. Chelsea R. Hewitt, author of Language as a Social Reality, The Effects of the Infantilization of Women, explains that gender roles are placed on people as early as infancy, with newborn girls receiving gifts that emphasize their proclivity for shopping, fashion, and the color pink, and their insistence on taking too long in the bathroom getting ready, like older women are accused of. Newborn boys, on the other hand, are perceived as just one of the guys. All of his memorabilia is painted with tough animals like bears and lions. He loves the color blue and doesn't care too much about his appearance because he's a guy, and obviously men don't care about hygiene. These gender roles lead to a gendered society where things are split down the middle and handed off either to the feminine side or the masculine side. Feminine people are seen as submissive, receptive, loving, caring, and etc. And masculine people are seen as aggressive, out of tune with their emotions, strong, and perfect for leadership roles. The ideal of womanhood, then, is to be submissive, docile, nurturing, and small, while the ideal of manhood is to be John Cena, I guess. This gendered society with all of its gendered rules creates a power dynamic between feminine and masculine people, especially with language. Tavisha Sood correlates women in positions of power being called girls, missy, or young lady by men in the workplace with a man's attempt to diminish, belittle, or infantilize her in order to be perceived as the more dominant person. His comment, made to subvert any claim of authority she had, also branded the congresswoman as someone who doesn't deserve her position. Painted as a whiny child, this comment now has the domino effect of society perceiving her dominance for arrogance and her demand for accountability as a tantrum. This subtle misreading of her actions is how society starts to paint every ambitious woman as bitchy, letting women know that unless they are docile or childlike, they aren't the ideal mold of a feminine woman, end quote. And yes, infantilization even crops up in popular culture and gender expectations surrounding the infamous V-card phenomenon. The concept of virginity has long terrorized our culture. According to Wikipedia, the most dependable source on earth, the V-card is oftentimes tied to cultural and religious traditions that place special value and significance on this state, predominantly towards unmarried females, associated with notions of personal purity, honor, and worth, end quote. In the media and in real life too, but for the purpose of this video, the media, men who do not have sex are depicted as losers, undesirable, awkward, and just Steve Carell, I guess. Women who do not have sex sex are depicted as pure or prude and oftentimes respectable. Madeline Holden, author of Do Men Prefer Virgins, says on the matter, hence we have a gendered and heteronormative conception of virginity. It's embarrassing for men to be virgins and they should try to have sex as soon as possible. But virginity is a prize for women, and the longer a girl keeps her chaste state, the more admirable she is. This is where the male fantasy element supposedly comes into play. Because virgins are rare and precious, they're seen as the ultimate sexual conquest for some men. End quote. There's even a fascination for brides who are expected to be virginal, with the whole white representing innocence and waiting till marriage thing. Dr. Mark Griffiths, in his article titled Virgin Fascination, states, bride fascination is sometimes known as V-card fascination, where the ideal woman is pure and uninitiated, making her a safe partner in many ways. The bridal fascination extends to the image of an innocent appearing V-card having bride being your own total floozy. I'm trying really hard not to get demonetized here. Willing and anxious to do anything to please you sexually. End quote. So the V card often correlates to innocence. That's usually the driving point behind its allure. Some men, a part of Madeline Holden's study on the V card, even said that they don't actively seek virgins because it feels morally wrong, as people who have their V card are usually, but not always, are young girls. You see what I'm getting at here. I was delirious by this point, entirely drunk off the idea that yet again, I have made an intellectual connection. So I googled, what are some childlike qualities, and clicked on the first link I saw because that's the intellectual thing to do. Thisadultlife.org cites 10 things as being childlike qualities: being curious, wanting to explore, having an imagination, accepting others, having a sense of innocence, giving generously, being content, freely expressing love, getting up after a fall, and being believers. I also searched up what it means to be a feminine woman. Lisa Hart has a video on how to become a siren to seduce and hypnotize a high caliber man. What is he, a gun? Which features advice that states to angle your head down and look up, which makes men feel powerful and in need of protecting you. Lisa says it's a submissive way of looking and that it's innocent. She also says a higher pitched voice is feminine, but then again she says the same thing about a lower voice. This isn't me picking on Lisa, by the way, because I've got to say I think she changed my life. With the hip swaying walk tutorial, I have never felt more powerful. There's also this 2020 mindful graphic that boasts 10 tips on how to be more feminine and sexy, including taking care of your hygiene, dressing attractively, acting confident, smiling more often, being receptive, which is the same word used to describe Britney from that Rolling Stone article from earlier, being well-groomed, speaking softly, developing a right attitude, being educated, and being an achiever. And of course, the traits I mentioned earlier of women being perceived as loving, free-flowing in their emotions, nurturing, submissive, and etc. I thought it will be interesting to compare these two sets of traits and see how many we have that are similar to each other. Receptive from the feminine side and accepting from the childlike side are two sides of the same coin to me. Innocence, obviously, being loving and free in expressions are found in both, and I would argue that in some cases, children are expected to be submissive in the adult/child power dynamic, so we can tally that up as well. A lot of the articles I read that aimed to teach me femininity all emphasized a vague importance on hygiene and grooming. While most of them don't bite the bullet, or the blade, so to speak, one article was brave enough to explain what they mean by hygiene and grooming, and that is the dreaded body hair debate. Oh, that's another similarity on the list. This is a topic so lush and a bit hairy, pun not intended, that it deserves its own section. Body hair is a topic reserved for hushed discussions between gals, as we chat and sometimes lie about what we do and do not get rid of. Heather Widdows, professor of global ethics at the University of Birmingham and author of Body Hair is Natural, Society Thinking Otherwise is Dangerous, says that keeping your body hair is seen as a political statement for women, to the point where celebrities who decide to keep it, or in Julia Roberts' case, simply forget to shave, become entangled in the news cycle for an eternity. They're forever reminded of their hairy faux pas and branded unladylike until the end of time. It is the hairy body that stands out, says Widows, which is deemed abnormal and unnatural even though hair grows on our bodies every moment of our lives, end quote. Oh, what was that? Oh, I've just been informed that Veet has entered the chat. In 2014, the hair removal brand Veet were in a silly, goofy mood. They released a commercial featuring a woman hailing a taxi cab with her arm up for obvious reasons until she realizes the cab driver is looking at her funny from the other side of the windshield. She looks down in confusion and realizes her armpits are hairy. The camera pans up, and we see that the woman has transformed into an even hairier man. She curses and says, "I shaved yesterday," to which the cab driver drives off without picking her up. Because, sure. This commercial wasn't the only one that Veet produced about its weird body hair standards, and certainly wasn't the only one that faced immense backlash because of it. In fact, Veet released a number of commercials all with the same "don't risk dudeness" theme, where various women tried to keep others from realizing their body hair has grown back, and the ending is just them being likened to men. In one particularly interesting commercial, the camera zooms into a sunlit room where we see a man sleeping in bed. A hairy leg comes up from behind him and drapes across his hip, and all seems fine until he touches it, realizes it's hairy, and a man pops up from behind him saying, "I shaved yesterday." The implication here is that women have to get rid of their body hair, of course using Veet because, it's their commercial. Capitalism, or else those women risk being confused with men. Heather Widow states, "As the hairless body becomes the only acceptable body, a dramatic shift happens. Defluffing stops being a beauty practice and becomes redefined as a hygiene practice, as part of so-called routine maintenance. Hair removal becomes something we have to do, a requirement. It is not an option to refuse. It's like teeth cleaning, but without any of the health benefits."
10 out of 10. Yup. She ate that up.
People make a big deal about hair being unsanitary or unhygienic when it serves the same purpose as eyelashes and nose hairs, and you don't see people telling you to wax those. Well, not the eyelashes, at least. Harley Vandergreeten wrote an article for Healthline titled, "What's the Purpose of Public Hair? Monetization," you know the drill, which states, "Public hair serves a protective function by trapping pathogens that could otherwise enter your body. Removing public hair may therefore make a person more susceptible to common infections, such as UTIs, yeast infections, and STIs. Hair removal can also irritate your skin, leading to skin infections such as cellulitis and folliculitis." So cool. But if public hair is so important to the safety and protection of our most vulnerable region, why do we put such an emphasis on ripping and clipping and snipping and other synonyms ending in ing, especially when other countries outside of the Western world don't put as much emphasis on body hair removal as we do? Even in the ye old lute days, Catholic women were expected to grow out their hair as a display of femininity. It was kind of like that picture of those men riding their beards like bicycles, but the hair just comes from under the robe instead.
This joke was historically inaccurate.
Who said that? You're not gonna believe this, but it's not hard to figure out why removing body hair became so important for women. You could even say the selection came naturally. Mariana Serini states that the culprit behind body hair hysteria is the one and only Charles Darwin, coiner of natural selection and other scientific things I didn't pay attention to in middle school. He associated a lack of body hair with being more evolved and sexually attractive, and associated not shaving with primitive ancestry and an atavistic return to earlier, less developed forms. For no reason at all, I will now be showing you a picture of Charles' body hair is primitive Darwin, with no ulterior motive. Hey, that's a sick beard. Darwin's views on body hair caught on quickly. 19th century medical and scientific experts began associating body hair with sexual inversion, disease, pathology, lunacy, and criminal violence. But just for women though, just girly things, Serini states that by the early 1900s, Upper and middle class white America increasingly saw smooth skin as a marker of femininity and female body hair as disgusting, with its removal offering a way to separate oneself from cruder people, lower class, and immigrants. By 1964, 98% of American women aged 15 to 44 were regularly shaving their legs, end quote. But don't get too ahead of yourself, because removing body hair back then was nowhere near as extreme as it is today. Serena goes on to say, in the late 1960s and 1970s, full bushes were not at all uncommon, even in Playboy. Around that time, you also had the second wave of feminism and the spread of hippie culture, both of which rejected hairless bodies. For a lot of women, body hair was a symbol of their fight for equality. It wasn't seen as unnatural. Not yet. No, it didn't become totally taboo until a shift occurred in pop culture, porn videos, and when new techniques like waxing became popular. After that, hairless bodies became synonymous with femininity, leading to such commercials like Veet, which compares hairy women to men. I expounded all of that to get to this next sentence, that it's kind of weird how we equate hairlessness, especially in the public area, as hot and desirable, especially when the whole reason that hair is there in the first place is because we went through puberty and are one step closer to not being children anymore. I think that's what hair signifies for me, in my opinion. Hair is an indicator that I'm a grown woman. I think all of this makes me realize that society has too long of a track record of relating women to young girls and wanting them to look and behave too much like children for my moral liking. And let me just step in and say that it doesn't automatically make you a Wikipedia file because you like not having body hair or you prefer other people not having body hair. That's your prerogative. The problem comes when you begin policing other people and even yourself. When you say you're not feminine because you don't shave or wax, or when you say other people have to be hairless or they're not woman enough, so I'm going to make them wax and make them shave.
Just mind your business.
Anyways, let's get back on track. Between salivating over teen celebrities, the nymphette aesthetic, and Lolita obsession, to the similarities between childlike traits and stereotypical feminine traits, it seems like society has a perverse relationship with women, almost fashioning them after children for whatever reason. And the idea that some people prefer hairless, innocent, V-card having
bodies
does nothing to help this conclusion. That is what I was going to end the video with, but that's when I found out about
tangents.
I do think it's an interesting theory that the Western world is infected with a sick case of the Wikipedia file disease, but it could also have something to do with our heteronormative, male gaze pandering society. Because duh. And for clarification, just because I say the term male gaze doesn't mean women aren't incapable of internalizing and upholding heterosexist ideals too, which we will see later. The idea that women who do not adhere to stereotypical gender roles like shaving, submission, and etc. was also a popular retort for anti-feminists, who viewed feminism as an ugly, aggressive woman thing or a womanless thing entirely back during the first couple of waves. According to Brianne Foss, a university professor and author of Dreaded Otherness, Heteronormative Patrolling in Women's Body Hair Rebellion, the fear of being perceived as the dreaded other, in particular hairy, manly, angry, and lesbian, has long been the basis of women's shunning of the feminist movement. We have essentially likened feminism as the antithesis of ideal womanhood, which we can definitely see with previous revolutions and popular iconography of ideal women in the past. The unideal woman, the feminist, is vulgar, manly, hairy, and a lesbian, which just won't do in our society because how will men be satisfied by that? Feminists have historically been defeminized because of their perceived bitchiness, desire for more in terms of rights. The ideal woman, on the other hand, is hairless, feminine, polite, and a purveyor of male dominance. But why is that? Why does hairlessness equal femininity? According to Foss, hairiness connotes masculine qualities. Remember when I went on and on about gender roles? Yeah, hairiness fits in there too. Hair has historically, at least in some context, represented power, so women's routine hair removal symbolizes their lack of such power. Maybe that's why women who are perceived as aggressive and domineering are also painted as hairy and manly, because those are male traits to have. So they say. From there, women internalize ideas about their bodies as central to proper femininity and become other-directed, concerned about the male gaze and oriented toward the heterosexual dating market. Women learn to dislike or deny their bodies, hide their menstruation. Women of color often adopt hair straightening and skin lightening procedures. Poor minority women are often encouraged to pass as heterosexual to escape workplace discrimination, violence, and negative judgments. Women disguise and conceal their natural bodies and undergo a vast array of bodily modifications, procedures, grooming habits, and maintenance behaviors to conform to social norms. Embedded within such behaviors is the insistence on the social maintenance of heterosexuality, particularly appearing heterosexual, and its accompanying body practices. Foss, who I mentioned being a university professor, wanted to see this theory play out in real life, so they assigned an extra credit opportunity assignment for their class, and anyone who wanted to participate would let their body hair grow out and write a paper about their experience. The results, let's just say, are a terrible concoction of transphobia, homophobia, and all-around human extinction level bigotry. These are their stories. Bisexual and lesbian women who grew out their body hair confronted issues of sexual identity, disclosure, and direct homophobia and heterosexism, often prompting them to feel outed in public, less in control of identity disclosure, and fearful about others' negative responses. A student named Valeria said, "Since I am an open lesbian to my friends and family, I think not shaving would give people another reason to look at me weird. My mom would freak out if I stopped shaving because she already thinks that I want to be a guy. She doesn't realize that being a lesbian and liking other women doesn't mean that I want to be a man." A bisexual student named Mona states, "I have never been a girly girl by any means, and one of my mom's main hangups has always been that I never really conformed to traditional female roles. About a year ago, my mom found out that I am bisexual. This made her even more sensitive about my gender identity. Upon taking this study, many women that were participating made the remark that someone asked if they were turning into lesbians. I guess since my mom cannot be worried about me being lesbian, she just jumped to the next step and asked me if this assignment was really just an excuse because I wanted to get a sex change." A student who chose not to shave before the assignment was even given reflected on their own experience with keeping their body hair. "A group of the more popular girls followed me home after school, calling me a lesphobic slur, because I hadn't started shaving my legs yet like all the other girls in my grade. I cried and asked my mom that night to show me how to shave." Beth states her brother associates body hair with lesbian identity and not getting a man. He said that any woman with body hair certainly couldn't get a man, so I'd have to start dating women if I ever wanted to have sex. Here, getting a man represents the assigned goals of women's body practices. Rather than indicators directed at women themselves, comfort, confidence, and so on, attractiveness by male standards stand as most important. And finally, Evelyn states, "I keep worrying that it's not just fun and games having body hair. Maybe some guy at a bar will see my armpit hair and think I'm a lesbian, and he'll round up a group of guys and attack me. I have heard about it happening to women who are perceived as lesbian. I've seen guys harass women who don't want anything to do with men." According to Foss, these responses reveal that queer women face particularly aggressive and direct homophobia when forced to reveal their sexual identity via the body hair exercise. As managing body hair can symbolize the management of negative stigma affiliated with minority status, women must not deviate because those who deviate face violence and harassment. Consequently, women internalize mandated conformity to heterosexual scripts in order to ward off negative male attention and avoid homophobic attack. The enforcement of gender here, again shadowing fears of trans identity, gender bending, and crossing lines of femininity, speaks to the networks of power that enforce both heterosexuality and femininity. Kelly must reassure others that she is still woman, as anything representing a middle ground becomes too threatening. It becomes clear to me with Foss's study that hairlessness and other feminine stereotypes are put in place for a reason that, yes, coincides with Wikipedia files, but also with a need to control women and keep them in their place within a heteronormative and male gaze-dominated society. People other than men also internalize and reinforce that same system. If women aren't shaving, then they're masculine because gender stereotypes just make so much sense. And if women are masculine in a heteronormative society, then they serve no purpose to the idea of heterosexuality, which poses a threat. Homophobia is also a bitch. If women aren't virgins, they serve no purpose to people who view as a conquest. If women aren't loving, nurturing, or innocent, then they're men, because gender stereotypes totally make sense and are not at all a twisted way to live life. And again, if they're men, they don't serve a purpose to heterosexuality and are perceived as threats to the natural order of things. But that's just my opinion. I want to end with this Billie Eilish quote that really encompasses my overall feelings of this topic. And not my responsibility, she wrote, "I feel you watching, always, and nothing I do goes unseen. So while I feel your stares, your disapproval, or your sigh of relief, if I lived by them, I'd never be able to move. Would you like me to be smaller, weaker, softer, taller? Would you like me to be quiet? Is my value based only on your perception? Or is your opinion of me not my responsibility?" Is really relaxing and that I should try doing ASMR. Walk a mile in these Louboutins, but they don't wear the shit for